Hello and welcome to the final Music Ally podcast of 2022. I'm Joe Sparrow, Music Ally's editor, and this is a very special episode. Music Ally has just released its Campaigns of the Year report, and we've finished the year on the podcast with our annual episode that highlights some of the best campaigns from 2022, chosen out of that Campaigns of the Year report from our experts at Music Ally. Stay tuned, folks. The 2022 issue of the Campaigns of the Year report has 60 highly detailed case studies, packed with data, KPIs, ideas and learnings directly from the teams who did the best work of the year. It's a really big, vital resource for anyone doing music marketing, whether you're a DIY artist or a manager or a major label. You can find a link to it near the podcast. You can grab it for free. Now, what is this Focus podcast? Well, so this podcast is going to be a little less quick than normal because we have 3 guests, but it will take the same amount of time as it would take Mohammed Rashid to hypothetically crack 10,000 walnuts with his head. Mohammed cracked 254 walnuts with his head in 1 minute in Rome in 2018, narrowly beating, by the way, Naveen Kumar, who managed to crack a paltry 239 walnuts with his head. And so for those of you keeping track, that means on one day in Italy in 2018, nearly 500 walnuts were cracked in 2 minutes with the use of foreheads alone. And they say Elon Musk is a genius for putting rockets into space. Anyway, talking of banging your head against the table, marketing music can be a frustrating and daunting task. So why not take inspiration from the best, tried and tested, successful campaigns of the year? So to pick out some jewels from 2022's marketing campaigns, I asked 3 of the key people at Music Ally to pick some of their favourites. And they've all picked 2 campaigns each, and they're all very different ones, so there's lots to learn and talk about here. You'll notice that my voice is slightly less sonorous and resonant than normal. That's because there was a problem with my microphone, so the backup recording will have to do. But the good news is, I don't talk very much. It's mainly Eamonn, Marlen and Magda, so you won't notice the difference. Okay, let's go and speak to them now.
Okay, so this is as close as we'll get to a Christmas party featuring us 4 members of Music Ally.
I've got a glass of water to celebrate.
Eamonn has a glass of water. I have also a glass of water with a vitamin tablet in. Magda has a glass of water.
I have nothing.
Marlen,
Unprepared.
Nothing.
Nothing.
So there you go. We're living on the edge here at Music Ally, folks. So I've gathered the 3 wise people, as we did last year, Eamonn, Marlen and Magda. First of all, let's do some quick introductions. We have Eamonn Forde, who writes our campaigns and behind the campaigns pieces and oversees the Campaigns of the Year Monster Edition. Hello, Eamonn.
Hello, I am here.
Thank you for joining us as ever. We're also joined by Marlen Hüllbrock, Head of Marketing and Audience at Music Ally. Hello, Marlen.
Hello.
And last but not least, it's Magda Jędrzejevska, Training Executive at Music Ally. Hello.
Hello.
And so I've asked you all to pick 2 campaigns and to say why they're good. And let's just dive straight in. Eamonn, what's your first choice?
Well, I kind of broke ranks this year, and rather than pick one from the Campaigns of the Year, I picked 2 that ran as behind the campaign pieces, which I think they didn't submit these for selection, but I felt that they were both interested in different ways. So I'm going to talk about those, I think, kind of, because it gives a little plug for our regular behind the campaign feature where we get people to go into greater detail. So the first one I picked, which I just thought was really interesting, obviously sitting in the West, hearing about how a campaign in Greater China runs, which was Universal Music China's campaign for a singer called Eason. And the most remarkable thing I found out about Eason is that he has produced 47 studio albums since 1996. That is a hell of a work rate. Like people would say, oh, look at Frank Zappa or The Fall. I'd say, look at Eason. He knows what he's doing. So
that's remarkable. That's a remarkable number of albums. I mean, I thought Rihanna was prolific, but that's...
Yeah, he doesn't stop. So last year, end of 2021 into 2022, he had a phenomenal year, which was basically off a track, which I'm not even going to dare to pronounce, but I was told translates roughly as Warrior of Darkness, which kind of became a viral hit several times over in China in different contexts because it was used in Arcane League of Legends TV series. Don't ask me. I don't want. I think it's some kind of fantasy thing, but I didn't watch it. And that was on Tencent, one of their streaming channels. So they effectively got a exclusive window, which doesn't really happen in China at all, because it was on TV first, and then obviously they're kind of cross media brands. But it was just a really interesting track that took on this viral life because of different things that was used in social media posts, where about kind of moments of everyday heroic activity, and then it was used. It kind of became this kind of unofficial soundtrack for emergency workers and hospital workers during the pandemic and things like that. And it suddenly it became viral in lots of different sources. So it suddenly had this kind of second, third, fourth wind. And the numbers they give me were staggering. They said in 6 months alone, the track had over 3 billion streams across all platforms in China. So this is a track that wouldn't really go beyond China apart from the Chinese diaspora. So you've only got, it's effectively 3 billion streams of one song in one country, and it's phenomenal. So I think people should go back and read that, because it's a really interesting insight into social media, which behaves in a very different way in China, and how a track can take on a whole different life. And we always, and it's something that we've been trying to do for years, is have campaigns from non-obvious markets, from non-kind of Western European, North American campaigns. Obviously, we do have a lot of those because that's where a lot of our readers are, but it's always fascinating to speak to someone working on a campaign in a market like China, because all of the rules that marketers in the West kind of hold dear just don't apply in China. It's a completely different set of rules, a different way of engaging, a different way of consumption. And I think it's just really important for marketers to look at those kinds of markets to understand how things can be done differently when you don't have the fail-safes that we have. Generally, when I'm speaking to people about campaigns, there's a kind of alphabet that they go through. There's certain platforms and certain techniques to do, and then this is completely different. And I think it's just important that people look beyond the West and look at kind of how artists are developed in other markets. We've got another one coming up in early January or February with an Indian pop star as well. So these kind of markets, India and China in particular, I think are really interesting because they behave in very, very different ways. So that's why I picked that one, just because it was so different, and it's the dynamics are unlike what most people would presume music marketing to be. Obviously, it's still heavily streaming based, but the way the platforms move and the way they interact and how audiences engage with them are very different. So I just think it was important to highlight a campaign like that.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one. Definitely one of the ones that stood out for me this year. And I'm pleased that we've actually started talking about the campaigns of the year by going off piste a bit, because this one is from our perspective here in Western Europe, completely unique in the sense that like you say, it became a cultural phenomenon. It just had waves and waves and waves of attention around it, and yet it did have an effect on streaming. And this is, I will link to this behind the campaigns, of course, below the podcast. So click through and read it, folks. But this is, as the music market becomes more internationalized. That's something, Eamonn, we've spoken about all year. This sort of rapid internationalization, and people are looking at trying to gain traction in South America and in, like you say, in China and India. These are all skills that everyone's going to have to soon pick up because, like you say, the rules don't apply there. So definitely a great starting point. Thanks, Eamonn. Fascinating stuff. Marlen.
Yes.
You've picked a couple of interesting ones as well. Who's your first choice?
My first choice is the campaign for Jake by AWOL.
Yes, and important to point out at this point, it's spelled JVKE, all in capital letters.
All in capital letters, and hopefully it is
so it could be
Jake.
We just don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Right?
I'm hoping I'm right. Yeah. Sorry if I'm not.
Yeah. Make stuff searchable on Google, but also pronounceable. Give us pronunciation guides for these pop stars, please.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it was a lot of fun reading through this campaign because there were a couple of elements where I was like, oh yeah, that's cool, that's interesting. First of all, I like that they kind of pointed out that there was a big focus on short form content, which is not surprising, but that they actually had a lot of videos that were carefully drip fed over several weeks rather than targeting a single spike, which is, I think, something that I sometimes see teams doing. They try out something in the first week of release, maybe the second week. And if one of the videos doesn't go viral or catches on, then maybe they're like, okay, let's park it there. So I think that was quite nice to read that the team actually had this really long-term approach, and even if one video doesn't make it, perhaps the next one does. So that was great to read. Also that they localized some of the top performing posts, which is actually something that in last year's edition, I think Oliver Tree did. So it's also interesting to see how some of these strategies that maybe were quite new last year, now more and more teams are picking up, and that they are putting in this, taking it one step further and really trying to make something resonate more and more with different local audiences as well. And
just to jump in there, Marlen, how difficult people are listening and saying, "Oh yeah, well of course that kind of makes sense. It's a good idea, to localize content and to put the resources aside to have a bunch of different content to keep getting the spikes of attention through a campaign." But is that something which requires, do you think, like a really significant investment of time from the team, or is it something that anyone can do?
I guess if it comes to platforms like TikTok or YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels, from what I can see, mostly it is just translating the lyrics or the bits of text that you're adding to the video, and have someone translate that, make sure the translations are correct, and just, as you know, you can edit everything within these platforms themselves. So I would say that probably it is fairly easy to do. It obviously depends on how many countries you're localizing this to.
Yeah. Perhaps more to do with planning. Like if you've got the time to plan it, you can do it.
Yes, exactly. And how quickly you can turn it around as well. Another interesting element of it was that they used an SMS text line, so growing his sort of D2C communication channel and using that to give fans access to unreleased track snippets and allowing them to vote on which songs would make the record, which is, I think, something that I'm seeing usually more of on platforms like TikTok, which also makes sense because it creates this engagement with the audience there. But I think it's also very smart to do something like this on a platform where you are a bit more in control of the relationship with the fans, because it's more direct, and using that as an incentive to grow your own database. So I like that they were doing it on that SMS text line instead of on the other social platforms.
Do you think, I've seen a lot of campaigns over the last year, and you've written about them, Marlen, because you also have written about tools for us in the past. Do you think that the SMS is a fad, or is this a component of the, like you say, the direct-to-fan thing, which is becoming such a fundamental part of marketing now?
I think it's probably, every artist needs to consider what is their sort of channel, their direct-to-fan channel that works best for them, whether that's SMS or email or maybe Discord as well. But I definitely don't think SMS is a fad. I think can be a very great tool to communicate more directly with the fans, sending them an SMS rather than posting something on social media. And for some artists, it's that which works best, and for others, it's another channel. But I think it's here to stay. I think then also this all accumulated on release day, which definitely seemed like there was a lot of effort putting in there to make this not just a regular release day where maybe one activation is happening, but really creating an event. So they were saying that there was a live global listening party on socials where the fans could listen to the album all together for the first time. And then after that, they also redirected them to 12 consecutive YouTube video premieres. So revealing visuals for each track of the album, which I thought was also just a different idea. YouTube premieres are pretty commonplace in release campaigns, but how can you do something that's a bit more different, a bit more exciting, and really creating long-term engagement with the fans on release day? I thought that was quite an exciting activation to do.
Definitely a whole bunch of different things in one campaign, but all working really well together. Magda, you've picked a couple of quite different ones to everyone else as well. Which is the first one you've picked?
Yes, so the first one I chose is the campaign for Dapz on the Map, who actually I haven't heard about before because I'm not really big on this like UK grime scene, but I think the campaign was very, very interesting. So I chose this campaign because I think this was a really well thought out concept, with multiple immersive ways across digital and outdoor spaces to engage the fans, which the team said was the goal of the campaign, and I think that they excelled in achieving it. So to explain it shortly, the campaign evolved around airplanes as related to the EP title and then the album title, and they did multiple assets and activations around this concept. So they included an airline logo design, a website design around the traffic control room, different audio snippets playing on airport themes like boarding announcements for pre-saves or duty-free for merchandise pre-orders, and many, many more, which I think is super cool. And they also did some in real life activations as well, like album listening sessions in like a airplane replica, I suppose, where the fans were, sent boarding passes, and the whole experience was complete with a check-in deck on entry, role-play air hostess, and Q&A with the artist. So and again, kind of taking the concept of the album and taking it a little bit further than just the music and maybe just the artwork. And lastly, I know that they're also launching an AR filter across socials, which is also very interesting kind of tap into the social media platforms when it comes to this campaign. So in general, I would say I would be very, very excited for artists to take on a concept like this and go, above and beyond digital and physical, outdoor and social, and just showcase it via multiple platforms and really create kind of immersive experience for their audiences, as kind of doing this world building thing.
Yeah, you're right that world building thing that they did was really comprehensive. It extended a little bit like the Jade campaign. Lots of different elements to it, which all work perfectly.
Yes.
Across online, offline, the events around it, and really built it. Sort of supported the release really, really well. And I guess another example of like something as boring as good planning. Like getting it everything ready and making it work.
Exactly. And especially, after COVID and after the pandemic, I can't listen anymore about like online streaming events. I'm very happy when I see people coming back and incorporating in real life events like fan meetings, listening sessions in real life as well. So I was very excited when I read about that.
Well, we're halfway through. At this point, Marlen, I just want to jump to you to say that we do have Music Ally is using the Campaigns of the Year sandbox guide and sort of extending it and bringing in a lot more learning and other information for Music Ally to make a webinar.
Yes.
Which you are part of, right?
Yes. We've done it for the first time last year, and we're doing it again this year, actually on the 8th of February 2023. And the idea is that we're trying to really summarize all of the key learnings from the report, because it's great to read through 60 campaigns, but also it's even better if then someone summarizes it for you and it's like, here are key learnings from all of these 60 campaigns. And we're also bringing in some learnings from the campaigns that didn't make the report as well. So really sifting through all of the data. So it's going to be
great.
exciting.
Yeah, sort of an intensive learning burst. So I will put a link below the podcast and you can explore that a little bit further.
While it intends to read 60 campaigns, I should point out that that's a fraction of what we're submitted. So my brain is swimming. It's fantastic to have so many submissions, but also overwhelming.
Applause to Eamonn.
Yes, I saw Eamonn's eye twitch when you mentioned that, because he has to read through. I think we had over 200 or something this time, didn't we?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it was the best year we had, which is.
Speaking of which, Eamonn, you've got another one, perhaps a little bit off the beaten track, but a really good one.
Yeah, well, this one is, again, they didn't, I don't know why they didn't, I think this was Universal Sweden, they didn't submit it, but it was one of the more really interesting ones I did for Behind the Campaign, and it ties in with some of the stuff Magda was saying about being sick of virtual events and actually doing real world things. So this was, I apologise to any Swedish speakers, is it Joakin Berg? I hope that's how you pronounce it, Joakin Berg, who was the lead singer in Cate, who were a big deal in Sweden for a long time, and they split up. And he kind of became this behind-the-scenes person, a producer and a songwriter, and they were never expecting him to do a solo album, and then he did. So and it was kind of a surprise release in the sense that no one really knew it was coming, and then he went, here's an album, and I want it out quite quickly. And I'm not going to do any interviews or any promo or anything like that. So I think they had to scramble very quickly to do things. So it was like, obviously, his band had split in 2016, so a lot of the platforms that are key to market today, like TikTok, just didn't exist. So they had to very quickly kind of build up a presence there. But the thing that really intrigued me about the campaign was that they got people to kind of enter this competition to go into an actual hotel room to listen to the albums. You could get these little slots. And I thought it was really nicely done because it was a really smart way for data capture quickly, because obviously they had no database for him as a solo artist. And the album artwork was based on a famous photograph by Anders Peterson, a Swedish photographer, of the backs of a couple sitting on a bed, and like it's quite a mysterious picture. It's famous in Sweden, so he used that as the cover of the album. So then they used that as the jumping off point, and let's do a listening experience in the hotel room. And I thought that kind of real world activation, when an artist isn't there but actually given a sense of the tangible to a campaign, and also, as I say, using that to get consumer data to build up a database. And then they also gave each of the tracks, they assigned them an image. So some of these, image and item. So some of these things were kind of secreted in the hotel room, and then each of the Spotify canvases had this different image for each song. So it's kind of like every song kind of became a mini brand within the album as well. And I just thought it was a really good campaign for an artist doing a solo album with no kind of data gathering whatsoever, like no social presence, any of that kind of stuff, and who wasn't doing any interviews or any promotion. I think they sent out a press release and that went up on the socials at the exact same time as it went out to media. So this kind of surprise, this guy who was in an arena level band suddenly is doing his first solo album. And fans found out at the exact same moment that the media did. It wasn't like they were being told in advance and to prepare things like that. And it was a really interesting thing just to have kind of fans at the centre of it all the way through, despite the fact that there was no involvement of the artist directly. And I just like that hotel room, as I said, kind of gave something that could have been very abstract a real kind of physical root. And I just thought that it's something you see a lot for particularly international artists and then regional offices who get either limited time or no time with an artist. Like, here is something that you can do when you don't have access to the artist. So, and that could also apply to catalogue campaigns if the artist is retired or the artist is dead or whatever. So it's the idea that you can actually create a sense of intimacy and a sense of fan engagement and fan involvement without necessarily having the artist front and centre of the campaigns.
That's a great approach, particularly if catalogue is getting more and more important in terms of not just income, but attention and listening time. You know, I would love to, for an artist that is dead or never going to get back together, I would love to go and be in a physical space and interact with something to do with it. It's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think also just the fact that artists are expected to do so much. They've got so many platforms to feed, and I think it just ends up either putting too much pressure on the artist, or it's diminishing returns because you've got kind of stuff that's being spread too thin, and it just reflects really badly. And I think sometimes, well, it shows that you can do stuff with the artist involved, but you can also do great stuff without the artist involved. And I think that takes some of the pressure. There's a lot of lip service being paid in the music industry to kind of mental health of artists and workload of and things like, and the expectations and this kind of endless content. But you also have like this incredible pressure on artists to deliver all the time. And I just think that we need to actually start doing campaigns that don't just kind of bombard the artists everywhere. Obviously, some artists really enjoy that, but I think also it's kind of it's a zero-sum game. I think if you're just putting pressure on the artists all the time, and you can just go with a bit of imagination, you can do stuff that doesn't have to involve the artists. They might oversee it and approve it, but it doesn't have to be an enormous drain on your time. And it also becomes a statement part of the campaign rather than do lots of bits and pieces everywhere. This just becomes the kind of creative center of the campaign, and then that everything else kind of resonates from that. Yeah, don't wheel your artists out all the time and exhaust them, because it reflects badly on them and it reflects badly on you.
Yeah, that's great advice, and it's going to become increasingly meaningful, because it's not like we're going to have fewer platforms going forward. There's only going to be more, and as you say, this zero-sum game it is a race to the bottom. Artists are going to get exhausted, and here's a great way, if putting as a label or as someone supporting mental health, you can put your money where your mouth is and say, okay, leave this, you approve this, leave this to us. We'll book a hotel room. We'll make this experience around it. It's going to be great. It's going to feed into everything else you do. And let's face it, it's not going to cost a ton of money to do that, but the concept is really good.
Well, I think hotels in Sweden are quite expensive. I think Sweden's just expensive. Yeah. Stockholm's an expensive city, but I don't know. Average salaries in Sweden are probably a bit higher than everywhere. But it's not like the costs are marginal in a big campaign, and if that's your big statement bit, and they were able to generate a lot of content. They filmed when people were there, and then that fed out, and you were getting months and months of content from literally a couple of days hire of a hotel room and dressing it.
I'll say it again, another example of great planning and thought about a central event, a central theme that feeds across lots of different things. And, again, a really good example of sort of that post-pandemic, in the pandemic, there's a lot of instances of people having to sort of quickly change plans and quickly come up with good ideas and working really well. Maybe that sort of infiltrated the wider thinking. And now people are saying, hey, let's come up with something really inventive and see what we get out of it.
And this also, it was good because it was about the fans, because you could bring a friend with you, but they would have groups of fans who didn't know each other from all around the country coming together and sharing this hotel room. So then there's that kind of sense of experience that the fans have. And I think they said that the fans were even a bit nervous about posting stuff up on social media, kind of going, oh, are we supposed to? And you go, like, how far things have moved. 22 years ago, everyone was locking down stuff being shared, and now they're just like, they can't even get people to share stuff willingly. Like, they have to go, please share this stuff.
Yeah. Well, great example. And I'll link to that one below the podcast as well. Thanks, Eamonn. Marlen, you've got another 4-letter artist.
Yes. That was the theme of my choices today. My second campaign is from Cate, which was a campaign by Believe. And the reason why I liked it so much was that it was very fans first, and especially for more sort of developing artists, I thought that was very great. Again, something that I think it seemed to be more of a focus in this year. Another great campaign there, which I'm quickly dropping because Joe forced me to boil it down to 2, but was very fun to watch, was the Fred Again campaign.
You can talk about both in one. That's fine. I'm not going to.
No, I'm sticking to the rules.
Okay.
Call a new artist Cate again, and then that
right.
That'll cover it.
Exactly. So I thought it was great. So as I said, developing artist. They had a couple of initiatives which were very much focused on the fans. So starting with some secret shows, small shows in a couple of cities, playing unreleased tracks for a select number of fans. And then also one of the things that I really, really loved was that there was a single called Ruin, and the artist then invited her fans to send over objects that their exes ruined for them, along with the backstory. And they then created this rage room and created a live stream where she was cathartically destroying these objects. So I thought that was just very... I really liked it that the team, really tried to create something a bit more special within the release campaign, even though it's I guess, comparatively smaller artists, and that these sort of things don't have to be reserved for artists that already have a huge established fan base, but that it is really important to do these things early on and nurture that relationships with the fans and create this little community. That's what I loved about it. And I thought it was a great idea. And then they also did a fanzine. So, and I really liked there as well how the digital was linked with the physical. So they were sourcing questions within Instagram stories with the question box. And then some of these questions and stories made it into the fanzine that they created. And the fans that contributed via sharing a story, they actually got a physical copy of the fanzine mailed to them. So I think a couple of really great initiatives to build that solid fan base.
Another really good example of blending in quite a smart way the physical with the digital. That idea of asking people to send stuff in and then you're going to destroy it on a live stream or whatever is fantastic. That's also going to really nurture that connection with the fans, isn't it? And also the fans watching are going to feel closer because of that.
Yeah, and I it's nice to see that something you do online, like asking fans for things on Instagram stories, it doesn't just go into the void, but there's actually something being made out of it, which I guess also gives more incentives to the fan to participate when they know there's more coming from them engaging.
It really was a campaign, and there's been a bunch of them, which are really about engaging fans in inventive and quite personal ways that don't feel necessarily intrusive on the artist side. And actually, the artist team can take a lot of the weight away from them. But at the same time, it's something which feels intimate, which feels authentic, and really pulls the whole community together with some sort of connection in there as well that allows data capture.
Exactly, yeah. And, as a former fangirl myself, I love to see those things because I would have...
Wait a minute.
Oh, no.
You've shared a nugget of information there, and I think we have to scratch away at it. What was your fangirl? Who did you fangirl over?
You have to subscribe to my SMS text line to find out.
Very
okay,
nice,
well,
nice.
my imagination has immediately gone to the embarrassing end of the spectrum. Thank you, Marlen.
I will message you on WhatsApp.
She's texting me now, and it says Justin Bieber. I didn't expect that. Okay. Thanks, Marlen. Magda, you picked another really good one, actually. And who have you picked?
I agree, and this one is gonna be purely digital, let's say. But I picked the campaign by Jagwar Twin for the release of the album 33. And this campaign is basically a great example of how artists can use Web3 and NFTs to create engaging experiences and kind of build a community of fans around them. First things first, they came up with the idea of an album as a season of television series, which are the songs, with Web3 sites as episodes, which sounds mind-blowingly creative for me. So this is already an idea that I was very interested in. And then they did create the whole metaverse called Hall of Mirrors, where fans would log in by connecting their crypto wallet, mint an NFT that served as a key to unlock different kind of things. They were also kind of searching for different codes around the metaverse, from what I understood, which then minted as NFT would unlock new rooms across the metaverse. So they were kind of building the world by searching for these codes and kind of working together, which is a fantastic way to nurture a fan-to-fan connection. And yeah, I think overall this is a great example of a marketing campaign that's tapping into the Web3 world and into NFTs. And I do highly recommend reading the full campaign or even exploring the site because, it's open for everyone, as long as you have the NFT key, which you can mint. And yeah, I'm sure it will provide a lot of inspiration for those people in music who are interested in, this trying to tap into the Web3 world, I think.
It's for sure. We're all kind of completely exhausted by NFTs and Web3 and the hype around them, and now we're starting to see some actual, tangible case studies and examples of people using NFTs and Web3 technology well. And this is if you have a look at the Jagwar Twin experience, it is kind of complicated. It is a bit confusing, which is part of the idea. It's supposed to be sort of super inventive and weird. And it is a little bit confusing, but once you understand how it works and you get into it, it starts to become clear, and it is a bit like we're all taking part in this puzzle. But then in the future, this is going to be a great grounding for future campaigns that are going to be much simpler and they're going to work really well. And it's starting to become clear that there's, on the marketing side at least, that the Web3 technology has some very clear roles. At the moment, the main one is a sort of access to fan experiences and fan clubs, and it's sort of allowing this again. It's about closeness to the artist, isn't it? It's about bringing the artist and fan close together.
Exactly.
Eamonn, you read through all hundreds of the applications. How many of them sort of had NFT or Web3 components this year?
There were not as many as I was expecting. So I think maybe my kind of dream with NFTs was last year was the kind of the shake guide. It was like everyone was doing them because everyone felt that they had to do them. There's panic, and just all of the terrible ones were done. It was like all of those kind of fifth generation Britpop bands by 1998, or the terrible Moosey Beat bands by 1964, when everyone else had kind of moved on. But then, so I think we're kind of getting rid of the terrible ideas, and that was always how I thought it was going to kind of play out. You were going to get like really naff, pathetic ones that were just had big artists attaching their names to it. Well, we say this is 1 week after former US President Donald Trump has created an NFT collection, and you go, my God, if NFTs can survive after that, then so I think that's probably the last kind of boost of snake oil in the NFT world, I hope. And I think it should never ever be this massive thing. I think it should just be a really interesting, creative thing that doesn't have kind of mass mainstream acceptance. Because, like, obviously people were talking about Grimes or whoever else was going making $30 million or whatever, and then people just saw this as a gold rush, and it wasn't. I think it was always very much, it should always have been a creative platform first and a revenue platform second, and everyone else. The hype around it last year, the year before, was very much flipped. It was about make money first and then worry about the creativity. And I think we're through, hopefully we're through the other side of that. I should say on that Jagwar Twin one, while we pick 60 campaigns of the year, we don't pick a winner as such. We list them all alphabetically by artists, but there are little spot prizes all the way through for best fan engagement or best use of TikTok or whatever. And that one got best use of NFTs because it was operating at a level that was just so far and above what everyone else was doing. There was so much creative thought. It's a kind of hand spinner trying to comprehend what they were doing, but they were doing so much stuff, and I think that's kind of what I was hoping NFTs would be. They would just suddenly go, okay, it's this creative platform, it's this creative canvas. Let's just go wild and let's just let's invent worlds and let's just push the technology to the limits. Whether or not they make money out of it, I don't know. But the fact is that it was very much, okay, what can this allow us to do creatively that we couldn't do anywhere else? And they really, really went for it. And I think that's why it wasn't even close. The other kind of people using them, things were interesting, but it was just operating at a completely different level.
It's important to note, I think, that Jagwar Twins team, it was very in-house. There was a sort of in-house NFT coding expert who was enabling all this, and I think that's a key thing to take away from this for the future. That is,
it felt really thought through, the whole thing. It wasn't just. It didn't feel. Excuse the pun. It didn't feel tokenistic.
Yeah, very good. And that's something that, this is designed. This kind of stuff, these NFT DAO fan club experiences are very complicated and perhaps abstract when you look at them from our perspective. But for people who are extremely online and people who are very connected to the NFT and Web3 world, this will feel native to them and actually is sort of the equivalent of doing a tour. It's like, if your starting point for understanding music is, I stand in a room and pay for overpriced beer and watch an artist on the stage, this is the equivalent for people whose starting point is, well, it's a tokenized fan club experience, isn't it?
Well, this is the kind of prog rock concept album stage of NFTs, rather than the terrible T-shirt stage of NFTs.
Well, I'm looking forward, excitingly, to the punk NFTs phase where, oh no, we've had that, haven't we? The Sex Pistols already did that, didn't they?
The Sex Pistols did that, yeah.
They minted an actual coin with an NFT. Magda, to go back to you as a fan, obviously this is about connectivity with the artist and the fan base. We'll go to our resident fangirl, Marlen, in a minute. But what would it take for you as a fan to buy an NFT or to engage in that kind of the sort of token economics of setting up a digital wallet and engaging with an artist? Would they have to be really your favorite artist, do you think?
I think it would be either one of my favorite artists, because let's be honest, if Charlie XCX dropped an NFT collection, I would just buy all of them. No thinking,
right.
No thought put into that. I would just do it. But it would have to be either my favorite artist or something really visually appealing, something really, immersive, something that would like kind of grasp my interest. So honestly, I would kind of log in to the Jagwar Twin metaverse site, because it looked really beautiful and it looked really interesting. So I don't think it has to be necessary for super fans, but yeah, as you said, it has to be really well planned and a part of this kind of bigger campaign, not just jumping on the let's make an NFT for money bandwagon.
And Marlen, what would the circumstances be for you to buy your NFT?
Yes, I mean, absolutely would have to be one of my favorite artists. And I think because there have been so many drops now, it probably would have to stand out in some way where I would feel like, wow, this is really giving me something that is usually really hard to get. So to hopefully I'm not getting out of the topic too much, but I was briefly considering investing in a Formula One DAO because they were promising the plan is to get access to the races, and I was like, yeah, obviously it's hard to get tickets to a race. I would invest in that. So I think really thinking about what is something that the fan base really wants and that is usually really scarce.
Yeah.
I think that
access is key, isn't it? And Eamonn, this ties. I mean, by the way, I will say, I was briefly considering investing in a Formula One DAO. It's about the most 2022 sentence I think we're likely to hear this year. But Eamonn, it sort of goes full circle, doesn't it, to what you were saying, and Magda, what you were saying about access to artists and them being burned out and mental health. If there's a way of tokenizing that and regulating that, we're perhaps putting less pressure on the artists, making fans more happy, making the artists more happy because they're being more creative in a direct way, and we're all happy.
Yeah, I think so. I think, but I guess the artist should have some kind of editorial control over it, even if they're not directly involved, because it represents them. You don't want it to be. It's kind of my fallback argument about all marketing campaigns. Would Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons do this? And if he would, don't do it, because it's crass and it's terrible and it's badly thought through and it's just about fleecing the fans. So yeah, that's my don't be Krusty. That's my advice in all marketing.
Then we should consider that as the strapline for the Sandbox guides.
Under the masthead,
don't be Krusty the Clown.
It's that great Krusty the Clown line about it's not just good, it's good enough.
I'll be honest, I think I've subconsciously absorbed that and used it many times in my career. So on that note, Eamonn, Marlen, Magda, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank
you. I will
you.
put links below the podcast to Eamonn, your behind the campaigns. Magda, I'll put a link to the webinar for people to explore, and of course there will be a link to the campaign of the year. Sandbox guide itself.
We're also going to give out a free NFT if any of Marlen's friends can come step forward and tell us what musical artist she embarrassed herself being a fan of.
Oh, there are too many people that would gladly tell you for free without an NFT.
Well, there's an NFT of you looking embarrassed in 3D.
I'm not embarrassed. I'm embracing it. I'm owning it. As should everyone.
Good. Yeah, there's no guilty pleasures, Marlen. Just pleasures.
My life is a guilty pleasure.
Yes, can confirm that, folks. But anyway, we do want to know, so it's joe@musically.com if you'd like to share that with us. Okay. Thanks to the three of you, as ever, a highlight of the year on the Music Ally podcast, and see you in 12 months' time.
Woo.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Are we off? Can we swear now?
And there we go. So if you found that useful, please share this podcast on with someone else who you think will also get something out of it. And if you'd like to email me and give me your thoughts, it's joe@musically.com. That's joe@musically.com. Don't forget, we have a free weekly email called The Knowledge, which rounds up a bit of this and a bit of that, of the best analysis, news, marketing, insight, and skills from Music Ally. There's a link below the podcast, so sign up and impress your boss. And don't forget as well, you can check out to see if you are eligible for a free Music Ally subscription. That link is also beneath the podcast. So that's it from me, Joe Sparrow. Until next time, farewell.